Unusual, our good friend Troy Anderson, and we have something quite different here. This physical therapist, Jessica Bento. Unfortunately, Troy has moved to Wyoming, so while he still will be a part of some of our metabolic stability, I didn't have to shoot this video, unfortunately, without him. A lot of the concepts are coming from both of us. I want to make that clear because we do love to still bounce great ideas off of each other. The thing we want to talk about today is something actually kind of very dear to me, that many of you may not know. In the last probably about 2.5, 3 weeks, I went through 3 spinal surgeries. Don't worry, it wasn't a car accident, anything of that nature. It wasn't stupid lifting. It was a 26-year-old injury that sort of just caught up to me. And I really give a lot of credit to our metabolic stability concepts for pulling it off as long as I was able to do so. However, still very unpleasant to go through 3 spinal surgeries that go through and end up with a spinal fusion. So it made me think about, while I was laying in the hospital, are we really doing a good job of being preventive with our clients in getting them in a position where they're going to be really unlikely to experience low back pain? And then I was doing that, and a lot of you guys have heard is that 80% of people in our culture are going to experience low back pain. And that seems kind of like a relatively random number. But I was going across some research, and they did a study, and they took 98 subjects, and they did MRIs of these people. And they found in that group about 52% of the people did not have back pain, but had a bulging disc. And 27% of the people did not have back pain, but had a disc protrusion. Well, if you do the simple math, that's almost 80%. So that means at some point or another, the people that we're working with, for the most part, are already predisposed to having low back problems. And unfortunately, sometimes we do things to actually create back problems when there weren't any to begin with, because they're already set up to have those issues. So what are a couple of things we can avoid? One is spinal compression. Discs and disc problems do not like spinal compression. So what's spinal compression? The easiest way to think of spinal compression is if Jess were to put any type of load in her back. Okay, so very honestly, we've already talked about research where load in front can stimulate just as much muscle and strength as load in back, even at lighter loads. So don't be afraid to be a little bit different. There really are very, very, very few instances, I can probably count on one hand, where having load upon the back is necessary. Spinal compression also comes in other forms that would be probably less suspecting. One is when we create a lot of tension, or sometimes positional stuff like a deadlift. A deadlift actually creates over 10,000 newtons of spinal compression force. And to put that in perspective of what that is if I was to lift up a box from my knees, that's about 55 pounds up, that's about 5,000 to 6,000 newtons of force. And the reason I bring that up is a lot of people say, well, we need to deadlift because we need to get people ready for everyday life. But what we're doing in the gym is creating twice the amount of spinal compression force than what most people are going to experience in their daily life. In comparison, the kettlebell swing weight produces about 3,200 newtons of force spinal compression. Now, there's other things like shear and other things we can talk about, but my point in sharing this with you is there's better options in training hips, trunk, and other muscles that won't create that same spinal compression. So this month's metabolic stability is going to be about exercise that we can both prime the body, have some progression, still challenge ourselves, but do it in a way that's really safe and effective. So the first drill we're going to cover is an ultimate sandbag bird dog drag. Now, bird dog for a lot of you is nothing new, so we're not going to get too in-depth about why we're going to do it. There are some benefits. It's the basis of some cross patterning, so some of the things we want to see. The main thing we're going to look for in the bird dog is that Jessica doesn't drop her pelvis and go into lumbar extension. So this is really a pelvic control drill as we move the extremities. So when she does the drill, we should see the pelvis remain steady and minimal movement through any lumbar spine area. Less is better. Now, the reason we're using the ultimate sandbag and not a band is, in my experience in teaching bird dogs, is because of the placement of the band. And actually, when people press, they actually tend to go and want to lean into extension because of the direction of force. With the drag, they get a lot more of a tendency to brace through the torso, which teaches them not to move through the lumbar spine. So let's go over the drill. So Jessica's going to set up a very light, because a little bit of weight goes a long ways, ultimate sandbag across her body, a little bit of a diagonal. She's going to grab the palm up with one hand and as slowly as you can, begin to extend at the same time, extending her leg out. So go ahead and relax. See how she was able to do so without going into lumbar extension. To bring the weight back, she's just going to grab the other arm and she's going to do the opposite. Now this traditionally is not part of the bird dog series, but we can add it into a little coordination pattern and get different cross patterning action going upon the trunk. So let's see it again. Very nice. And we'll go back one more time. So this is a very slow control drill. So you can take a 10 to 15 pound core bag and make this incredibly challenging by making your client take 5 seconds or longer to do the drill. We can end it with a pause and hold out for the shoulder. There's other ways we can make it more difficult by just going from the load factor. You're going to find this to be very challenging, but gives us instant feedback as well. If people are not bracing, and we already know bracing is the base concept for core stability, you'll see them almost immediately go into that lumbar extension and have problems with the movement. So you may notice we're systematically going from the ground up. The reason for that is if the body can't do these movements in the most stable position, and the most stable position is on the ground, then when we have to navigate gravity, it's going to be even more difficult to do so. So make sure you're working through these proper progressions. Now, we're going to do another shockingly new drill, side plank. Now, I say that jokingly because I know a lot of you are already using side planks, and if you're following material by Dr. Stuart McGill, you'll notice that the side plank is one of his big 3 exercises, not the front plank. So a lot of our progressions should be really focusing on a lot more side plank than front plank positioning. Now people do the side plank wrong all the time, so I'm not just going to do it just without any load to begin with. She's going to make sure her elbow is underneath her shoulder, and if she does the straight leg variation, as Dr. McGill teaches it, it comes a staggered form. Now most people put one over the other, but this is actually staggered. It's the way Dr. McGill teaches it. Hips fully extended, chest open. Eye position is important because if she looks down, her whole body tends to go into a little bit of rotation. So she wants to look straight ahead of the action. Now, what we're going to do is a slight variation. So where do you go with this drill? We're going to have her bend her knees, which is perfectly acceptable both with and without load. We're going to bring our ultimate sandbag back in, and we're going to use our suitcase handle. Now what I love about this is the leverage that the ultimate sandbag creates. So as you pull the weight up, the weight starts dropping down from you. So what Jessica's going to do is she's going to bridge up and very slowly try to drive this elbow up and in towards her butt. So it's not a pure upright row, she's pulling up and back. So what we're doing is 2 things. We're loading both lats. So she's learning how to load the lat, which is important for packing the shoulder for a lot of pressing movements. 2, as the weight's being pulled up, there's different lateral forces acting upon her body. So she's working harder to control her side plank during the side plank row. And because the distance is quite short, we can go nice and slow and add pause with it. This is more, again, of a slow control drill than it is trying to add maximal load. The distance is small, so you're going to take your time with it. If you're just yanking on the weight, that's not really the purpose of the drill. Over time, we could straighten out the weights to make it more difficult. That will be easier than trying to go up and weight in your ultimate sandbag. So try this drill, and you'll probably be surprised at how difficult it really is. So for a long time, I was actually one of the people that kind of poo-pooed the idea of using carries as a form of metabolic conditioning. The reason being is coming from a background having done strongman, unless you really heavily loaded and went for really hard distances at high speeds, there wasn't really a great metabolic effect to doing a lot of carries. And I didn't really see that as practical for a lot of the clients that we're dealing with. And then actually reading a paper that recently came out in New Zealand, it started dawning on me that the more appropriate use or way to look at carries is not necessarily looking at it from a metabolic standpoint, but more so looking at it as possibly a substitution for deadlifting. It's very interesting to read some of the research showing that the ground reaction forces we're creating with a lot of carries is actually quite equivalent to that of deadlifting, and we're getting less spinal compression upon the body if we do things like farmers and some of the other positions. Things like yoke walks obviously will cause a lot of spinal compression. The other interesting part is that carries create this horizontal displacement too, which is important because what's so unique about an exercise like a kettlebell swing is we get both vertical and horizontal displacement. Well, the same thing with our max lunge. We get horizontal and displacement load, which is just like what we do when we walk. So when we do the most fundamental human movement, walking, we get both vertical and horizontal movement. When we do a lot of things in the gym, we only get the horizontal. So this is a nice bridge to doing that, and we can do it in a safer position. Now, having said that, there are a lot of ways to manipulate the walk. First and foremost, from a programming perspective, is you're definitely going to want to introduce at least a minute interval with the walks, and you're going to want to keep a pretty good pace of walk. So it's not just pick up the weight and walk casually. You're going to want to walk at a little higher rate, because that's actually been shown to create more ground reaction forces. So you want to cue that to your client. I say the minute because you also want that time under tension. Now let's be realistic, your clients can get bored easily. So if you say go for 5 minutes, that can be quite torturous and boring for your clients. So you can do a minute's worth and basically do something else, come back to a minute's worth, do something else. There's a lot of ways to be creative with this and build up with that time frame over a course of weeks and months. Now let's talk about the different equipment. The two pieces of equipment I love most, you can probably tell from our mailbox stability, are kettlebells and our ultimate sandbags. And this tends to be the case with the carries as well, because they do things actually very differently. So I'm going to show you a really easy example. You'll notice if you went to the Perform Bear Summits this year, that Gray actually used ultimate sandbags for farmers walks. So if Jessica picks up both bags here, you'll notice that there's a size difference, and if she just takes one step forward, the bags actually move far more. Go ahead and relax, Jessica. So she gets far more displacement of the load when she carries the ultimate sandbag in that farmer's walk than if she were to grab two kettlebells. As she walks, there's not that much displacement because they're much more dimension and more compact. So let's put those down for a minute, Jess. So why use one over the other? So if we're going to go for more of a core stability standpoint, we're going to want to use the ultimate sandbags, because as we move, especially if we change direction, go around cones, things of that nature, we're getting a lot more core stability. If we want more grip, we're going to want to use the kettlebells, because we're going to be able to load heavier. We're also going to have thicker handles. So the nice thing is you can cycle both over the course of weeks, months, or days, and you'll get a different training effect. Now, let's talk about different holding positions. We'll talk about the ultimate sandbag first, so we'll use our black ultimate sandbag here for a minute, Jessica. So, farmer's walks are great, but there's a lot of different things. Yes, you can do also single arm farmer's walks. I like to change position and height because that changes stress upon the body. So one of the first things we can do is we can go into a bear hug position. So Jessica shows the bear hug. Now the beautiful thing about this is she's engaging her lats, her upper body. The mistake that people make is when they start walking in this position, they start leaning back upon their low back, and so they start resting upon their lumbar spine. We don't want to do that. We want to see the nice, still postural alignment that we have in this position. Nice job, just relax. We can go ahead and go to a front load position. So again, many of you have seen this through the different series. Now the difference between a front load position here and the rack, and we'll show you with the kettlebells in a moment, is the load is more pressing down upon her whole body, so causing her, again, a lot of compression, again, making sure that we're not resting upon the low back. We'll go quickly to the fist position, Jess. I'm showing you these subtle changes because they make a big difference. So just by going to the fist, this looks similar, but creates a different stress. So this is actually much more fatiguing than being in the front hold. Now, we can go overhead, which extends the lever arm, but I want to show you one more. We're going to go offset position. Now this is actually a really important difference here. I know doing bottoms up kettlebell carries is very popular, but I actually prefer this method here, our offset grip, because we get the same training effect. We'll come down, Jess. But we don't have to worry about the client missing or getting out of position and smacking their wrist with a kettlebell falling down. So I actually prefer the offset grip to a bottoms up kettlebell press. We're getting that same side load. Of course, we can also do the shoulder position, and the shoulder position is really important because we're trying to really avoid that lateral instability. So if you want to work lateral stability with ultimate sandbag, we have the single suitcase carry, we have the offset position, and we have shoulder. So all those three are really popular. So then what do we do with the kettlebell? So let's put these bags over for a minute, just. So again, we could still do farmer's carries. We can still do single arm farmer's carries. But we can do, make sure we can do one arm rack. So let's put one in the rack position. And we can do a farmer's carry in the other arm. So getting some nice cross patterning. Obviously, double rack position is possible. Now, we'll get more pressure on the outside of the body, so you'll notice that this feels a little different. We can go one arm up, one arm down. The nice thing is you can go till people fatigue and then switch. Okay? You can even have it come down just where when Jessica steps forward, she's going to press one bell up and then come back. Nice. And we can definitely work that cross pattern again. So if left leg goes forward, right arm goes up. A very simple cross pattern drill. So again, come on down, Jess. There's a lot of ways we can manipulate this to create a challenge. So you want to make sure whatever you do doesn't compromise their postural alignment and allows them to walk in a good speed and pace. So hopefully you're also reading our metabolic stability article, and so you'll see I call an exercise the unsung hero. And it was interesting because as going through some of McGill's work, I saw him talk about this drill where when you really take away or you fatigue the low back capacity, you can do this drill where you have a sled, you take a manila rope, you do a hand over hand pull in the hinge position, and you can develop the low back, hips, grip, and upper back all at once. And I'm like, man, well, coming from strongman, that's something I've done quite a bit with trucks and a lot of different implements. It is a really challenging drill. Now you can do that specifically, but you're gonna need one thing, well actually two things. One is you're gonna need a lot of space. Because if you don't do it for enough distance, you're gonna be like, okay, I don't really feel that much. And you need a lot of equipment. So you need a sled, and you also need a rope and at least something heavy to drag, whether it be a car, kettlebells, whatever it may be, or even another sled. So we're going to economize that and go talk about how do you apply the same concept in groups, and really the equivalent exercise is a bent over row. Inherently what Dr. McGill's talking about is a bent over row. And you've seen us talk about bent over rows before metabolic stability, but let's go over the benefits. So we're getting a lot of isometric core strength. We're maximizing that hip hinge. We're looking at scapular mobility, and we're developing upper body strength. And it becomes a really unsung hero. People don't like using it because, why? It really exposes deficiencies both in core endurance and mobility at the same time. Our clients can't maintain it, they start coming out, they don't have good hip mobility, so they can't get in the right position. So instead of solving the problem, they don't do the bent over row. Obviously we must solve the problem and do the bent over row. So we actually start a lot with the ultimate sandbag because there's a lot of gripping options. So the easiest gripping option is neutral. So not only can we lift more weight, but we can learn to pack that lat, which will carry over to our plank. So if we correlate this to a plank, we want to start learning how to load that hip. So you see how Jessica has a nice torso alignment, head is in good position. Nice. We can obviously just flip the bag over and change the gripping to either a supinated grip or a pronated grip. Supinated obviously uses more bicep, pronated uses less. So we can take the same weighted ultimate sandbag in a group format and adjust the grip to adjust the weight for the individual using it. We can do some unusual grips, such as an offset grip, where one outside, one inside, and this is how we do one arm rows. And basically by using the outside grip, we're causing irritation, we're causing tension to the other side, so Jessica learns to avoid rotation. Some of the other ones, we can do that. We can do a grip row, so we work grip by working right in the middle, almost like an Atlas stone row, or we can grab on the outside portion of both sides of the ultimate sandbag and really work a grip again. So a lot of cool variations within the same implement to make the exercise easier or harder. Now kettlebells allow us a lot of variety as well. So obviously we could start in the same neutral position. Yes, we can go supinated with them or alternating. Let's go all supinated first, Jess. Now, Jessica knows I love alternating, that's why she went into it. Alternating is going to be one of my favorite because an alternating bent over row, it has a lot of carryover to a renegade row. So if you have people that can't do a renegade or a push-up row, this is a great substitution because they're learning anti-rotational benefits and they're strengthening their upper body. You can do an alternating row a couple different ways. One is to just pull one up, one down. One is to pull both up, hold that posturally, let one up, one down, and that's even more challenging. So again, manipulating the same implement and load and adjust it for the person that you're working with. The thing that surprises me all the time is that people want to do long duration carries, but they can't have clients do bent over rows for any appreciable repetitions. So you should be able to do both. You should be able to do long duration carries. You should be able to do rows for a good amount of volume and load over time. So with these type of exercises, hopefully we've given you a new perspective upon how to train the core, how to prevent low back injuries, and how to maximize the most with your clients.